right. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us this evening. It's about a little after 6:30. I just want to reiterate, anybody that's on the telephone may want to figure out a different way to join because it is going to be visual, but if you can't, that's fine too. I just want to introduce myself. I am Brian Mersey. I am the systems administrator at Litchfield County Dispatch. Um, Jess is the training coordinator. She'll be doing the presentation. I believe I saw Kevin Webb. He's the communications manager, and Dan Soul is the executive director. Sorry, I don't know if anybody else from the committee's on, but I've muted everybody's microphone. If you can please leave it muted for the duration of the presentation, and then at the conclusion, you can unmute and ask questions or raise your hand or however you want to do it. So I am going to turn this over to Jess, and she can be on her way.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. Give me a second. I'll get the presentation up, and then we'll go over a little bit of information here. All right, so welcome. Today what we're going to do is we're going to discuss a few topics. We're going to go over why we decided to make these changes. Also, we're going to go over the new radio channels, talk a little bit about the fire tech integration into our CAD system, and then also the radio protocols, some general use guidelines, and the actual projected cutover. So why change? Quick recap is the process started around 2019, maybe even a little bit sooner than that. Survey was sent out to our directors and chiefs of service within our coverage area. A meeting was held at the fire school looking for feedback from our field responders to kind of determine what are some struggles and potential areas for improvement regarding LCD communications. So a couple of things were discovered. The first is going to be communication overload is going to be a big one. Radios are way more affordable these days, which means more responders were able to be on the radio at any given time. And you couple that together with a general increase in call volume, decrease in volunteer numbers, also a decrease in volunteers actually working in the towns that they reside, especially during the daytime, which then led to increased auto mutual aid dispatches and retones, which then led to the fact is there wasn't a lot of time for responders to actually being able to sign on, and there was that communication overload. In addition to that, there was a lot of feedback regarding poor coverage. So dead zones, responders struggling to actually communicate with LCD. So as a result, the communication committee was formed to create and execute a plan for improvement. And it's comprised of a handful of LCD employees and also representatives from various fire services and EMS agencies within our jurisdiction. The committee has worked diligently since receiving this feedback to develop a plan of action to address these concerns, which brings us here today. So a little bit of background, LCD was incorporated in 1989. It was going to be one dispatcher handling calls and dispatches for approximately 7 fire and EMS agencies. Today we have grown significantly in 2025. We are typically staffed by 5 to 6 and sometimes even more dispatchers and call takers, serving a total of 22 towns, which are comprised of all the departments that you see on the screen. So the primary responsibility of the fire EMS dispatcher is going to include all of these channels. Since we took on Plymouth and we also took on Winsted a few years back, is that the number of channels has only increased. And then you add into that, it's just a lot of miscellaneous coordination channels between state police, New Milford, Northwest Public Safety, so on and so forth. So this does not mean that they're handling everything alone as the primary fire and EMS dispatcher, as several of the LCD dispatchers are cross-trained on PD and fire EMS operations, which ends up leading to a very fluid structure that we have on our dispatch floor that allows shifting of roles to support each other based on whatever the shift activity is at any given time. So the communications committee decided to focus on 3 major goals. The first is going to be determine a way to cut down on radio traffic. The second being how to incorporate new technology, and also determine ways to increase radio coverage in our service area. So the first change that you're going to see, and it's going to be the most significant one, is the addition of a new response channel. In addition to that, just kind of as a side note, is our radio integration that we have here at LCD. It's currently right now dispatch and command are set up to have the VHF radio. So an example would be VHF dispatch along with Zello dispatch, 800 dispatch are all patched together at LCD, which allows the dispatcher to key up on one channel and it broadcasts over all three channels simultaneously. If any unit signs on using Zello or maybe the 800 radio, all those transmissions are going to come over the same location for the dispatcher, which kind of helps streamline our processes. Just the note is that once we do switch over to the new channel lineup, there's going to be really no major changes as far as seeing a difference with this, as response is going to be set up the same exact way. So the VHF channel, the Zello channel, 800, everything is for response is all going to be integrated as well. In addition, they decided to repeaterize the response and command channel. Currently, the way that the LCD radio system is set up, it is not set up as a repeater. So this is going to mean is when you key up on your radio over on the left-hand side, it's going to go to the closest tower site. From there, it's then going to be broadcast over to LCD. And as a result, if you're in Barkhamsted, for example, you're not going to hear any radio communications from any units in the southern part of the county and vice versa. So with the cutover change, this is going to be another major change that you're going to see is that once the system is repeaterized, when you transmit on the air, your message is going to hit the closest tower and then it's going to be rebroadcast to everyone in the field. So now this is going to allow everyone listening to the response channel to hear your transmission. This is also going to kind of, between this repeaterizing the main channels, upgrading some of our equipment, incorporating the state system, along with Zello, it's going to help address some of those coverage concerns. So for dispatch is now going to be an LCD transmit only. There's going to be no receivers, so field units are not going to be able to sign in with us on the dispatch channel. This is where all fire and EMS incidents are going to be dispatched off of. And then a future feature down the road is going to be the addition of automated dispatch. However, that's going to be at least a year out, just due to significant programming that needs to be done before starting any sort of rollout. Another big takeaway from the dispatch channel is the dispatch verbiage is going to remain the same. However, there's no longer going to be a pre-announcement and there's no longer going to be a repeat at the end. So the transmission is going to be dropping the tones and then one transmission. And the goal for that is to reduce the radio traffic. And with the addition of new technology, the dispatch info is way more readily available now these days, between having fire tech, the Everbridge notifications, and also just playback center features. In one of our last meetings that we had for our communications committee, it was brought up about the Knoxbox tones. Those are still going to be broadcast over dispatch. So the request is going to be made on the new response channel. Just make sure that your receiver for your Knoxbox is on the dispatch when we send the code to make sure that it activates. So this is going to be the new channel response. This is going to be addressing the problem of responders trying to sign in while the dispatcher is sending out new calls or retones on dispatch. By moving all the responders, the radio traffic to its own dedicated channel, now we can streamline communication and reduce interference. The response channel, like I said before, is now going to be a repeaterized system. And this is where you're going to go over your en route and arrival, your scene size up, and also any dispatch updates. So for actual response language, what we're going to use it for, I'm going to break it up into fire service versus EMS because there is a little bit of a difference between the two of them. Starting with fire service, it's going to be used primarily by the department's officers and apparatus. Please note the LCD is going to attempt to answer all responding units as shift activity allows. The nice thing though is because it is going to be repeaterized, is now everybody in the county is going to be able to hear who's signing on. Also, any other coordination traffic, such as on the air, waiting a crew, waiting a driver, we're trying to limit the amount of those transmissions as they're going to just be taking up the airwaves. The more important stuff for us is somebody actually going to the scene. So what we say is that for use a scene channel, attack channel, or some sort of a private channel at that point to relay that information. LCD is going to provide any incident details and updates to the first fire officer who signs on. So if you are the first officer, we're going to reach out to you and give you any sort of updates. Also, if there is a second call in your jurisdiction, we are going to have the dispatcher make sure that they try and reach out to you either on the response channel or potentially the command channel, wherever you're operating at that time, just to advise you, because we know that there are times where you may be able to reallocate your resources, and so we're going to give you a chance to do that prior to us actually dropping tones for automatic mutual aid. It's also going to be used by the first unit to arrive that they're on scene, and also your initial scene size ups. And anytime that you're going to be switching over to the command channel, we would like you to do it on the response channel. Give us the heads up there, just so that we can make sure that we're kind of have an idea of where everybody's actually located. To know about the response is that is not going to be used for any scene operations. That's what your TAC channel or your scene channel or a private channel is going to be used for. As far as EMS services goes, it's going to be used by the assigned EMS duty crew. For the most part, for EMS services, the response channel is going to be the channel that you're going to kind of stay on for the majority of your calls. We will also provide you incident updates and details to the first EMS responders who sign on the air. And it's also going to be the channel that you're going to be used to advise us that you're on scene and whether or not you're going to be en route or arrival at an EMS destination. For all services, this is where you're going to be doing your returning and available. Please note that our computer system only supports one time. So we try and recommend that maybe one person, usually incident command, is going to make the final decision about when the service is terminating the incident or when they're returning or when they're available. Because if we just go, one person signs on and says that they are returning and available, we're just going to mark it into our computer system. Any other unit after that, it's not going to override anything. We're just going to take the first one that we have. And somebody did ask a question in one of our previous presentations regarding county roll call. The tone will sound over dispatch, and then all the acknowledgements are going to be over the response channel. So now we have FireTech. This is going to be the new mobile app that sends your response directly into our computer system, which is unique from the other ones. The purpose of the implementation was to assist in reducing that radio traffic by allowing responders to show where they're going without having to do it over the radio. It's also allowing everyone in your agency to see who's responding and where they're located. And it also allows you to easily see what units respond to the same incident for other departments. I do have to put a disclaimer out there, is that this is an additional tool for our service members to use. With that, we do not recommend you to rely on this as your only source of alerting. We're going to kind of touch on that a little bit later. And also, please exercise good judgment regarding when to use it, so not while you're driving to an incident. So when you do have FireTech and when it's available, the intention is not for this to take over from the radio, but it is an additional resource for everybody to use. So when it's available, you're going to use it to alert us that you're going to be en route to headquarters of the scene. When you do arrive on scene, clear the scene, and the ambulances can use it to go en route and arrival at a destination. So kind of rule of thumb is going to be use it like we do the response channels. The green dot next to your name or your car number in the system is your confirmation that your entry actually made it into our computer system. Like I said, the EMS apparatus have a little bit of additional functionality within the app. They're able to mark themselves en route and arrival to the destination hospital. Do note though, if your destination changes, if you happen to get diverted somewhere else, is that you do have to get on the radio and let us know, as you're not able to change it. And then we'll have to make sure that the dispatcher changes it in our system. The ambulance crew is also able to mark if they're transporting ALS versus BLS. And they're also able to mark when they are clear and available within the app. Just be sure to advise LCD of any disposition if it hasn't already been marked. I know that there's times that you go out for, the ambulance will go out and it ends up being a refusal. Just make sure if you didn't actually select that at an earlier time, just let the dispatcher know, because we need to have that information for us to actually close out the call. Also note that functionality and special features are going to continue to increase as time goes on. The primary reason for this is because the app was rolled out a little earlier than expected due to the sunsetting of Rover or Spotted Dog, and that there are some known issues that are still trying to be addressed along the way, so please have patience with it as we're trying to make it a good product for you guys to use. So as far as what we're going to actually rebroadcast over a response, is apparatus going en route or arrival. Much like the radio, is that LCD is going to make every attempt to rebroadcast all the apparatus as shift activity allows. Just remember that that little green dot next to the actual apparatus or car number is your notification saying that it made it into our system successfully. Car numbers and apparatus are also going to populate into the CAD, and they're going to stop the retone timer. So just keep that in mind, is that if you have a car number or if you are an apparatus and you say that you're going to be going to it, it's going to push into our system, and then it's going to stop that retone. So basically you bought the call and you're responsible for it at that point. Also, only the top 3 officers are actually going to alert the dispatcher that you guys ended up going en route to the scene or en route to headquarters. Only the highest ranking officer is going to be rebroadcast over the radio. So if you have car 1 being the first one, if they end up signing on via fire tech, that's the one they're going to come on the radio and say car 1 is going to be en route to headquarters or to the scene. If car 2 also marks in fire tech that they're going to be going en route to headquarters of the scene, if car 1's already been rebroadcast, car 2 is going to be marked. We're just not necessarily going to repeat it over the air. And this does not apply to those who are signing on via radio. This is just going to be for those fire tech notifications. Our dispatchers do have access to a list of all the responders, just like you guys have in the actual app. It's purely for reference only. It's not going to dictate our responses. So the dispatcher is going to continue to follow any standard dispatch procedures for retoning if there's no car numbers or apparatus that sign on via fire tech or via the radio. And if you are going to be using fire tech, pick one or the other. Don't use fire tech to sign on and then switch over to the radio and also sign on. Do one or the other. As soon as you call in on the radio, if we mark you in the system, it's going to push into fire tech as well. And then also terminations, just make sure that you guys are doing that over the radio for the time being. So cellular technology is not going to be foolproof. Just do not rely solely on cell phones for notifications and responses. LCD cannot guarantee you will always get the notification for multiple reasons, whether it be network problems, dead batteries on your cell phone, connectivity issues, device malfunctions. We're always going to stand by the fact that radios and pagers are going to be the most reliable resource because they don't depend on networks that can be easily disrupted during emergencies. So on to commands. No huge changes aside from it being repeaterized now so that everybody can hear it. This is going to be where all of your OIC communications are going to be, primarily for fire incidents. Typically speaking, we don't see EMS calls really moving over to the command channel very often unless they're involved in some sort of larger scale fire incident. And they are not going to be for scene operations. That's where the scene channels and potential TAC channels are going to be used for. So just quick little review as far as scene channels go. They are not repeaterized. It is continuing to be a simplex system. So they go radio to radio. There's no tower involvement, which means that you do have some distance restrictions. That's why we're not able to hear you here at LCD because they're just going radio to radio. They're all pre-assigned. Nothing has changed with the assignments. And then just to note that all of their LCD radio channels, such as AirTAC and traffic, have not changed. They continue to also be not repeaterized or monitored by LCD, and they're designed to with those distance restrictions. All right, so now we have the LCD TAC channels. This is going to be only on those 700 or 800 radios. We have a total of 13 channels available. They will be assigned to LCD for CNOPS, and then LCD TAC 1 and 2 are going to be similar to additional coordination channels. So they were kind of designed to be similar to the command scene channels, but for an 800 system. So TAC 1 and TAC 2 are going to be like additional command channels. They do need to be requested by the OIC for use. LCD is going to be the one who assigns the channel based on what's going to be available. There's not going to be anything pre-assigned like the scene channels, as there's no distance restrictions. So anyone tuned into that channel can hear what's going on. Also, when you are choosing to use the 800 radio system, just make sure that you keep interoperability in mind, as only radios on the 800 system can access them, and they are not patched together with any sort of VHF channels. LCD TAC 3 through 13 are also going to be those at the request of the incident commander, and those are going to be much like the scene channels, and we are not going to, as LCD, we're not going to monitor these channels. We do have the capability to, But we are trying to set it up for a little bit better success, knowing that TAC 1 and TAC 2 are going to be the primary ones that we are going to be able to monitor. And the rest of them are actually going to be on a completely different radio page for us. So they're going to be accessible, but not as easily accessible as the other channels. So there were changes with the radio requirements and all the programming that came up. The first one is going to be the MDC identifier. There were a lot of agencies out there who did have identifiers, but we were trying to streamline everything. So if you're not familiar with the MDC identifier, it's going to be a unique number that's going to be assigned to each radio. When you key up, usually there's going to be a beep, and it's going to basically, it's transmitting this a unique identifier, and it's going to display on the radio console here at LCD when you transmit. The nice thing about this is it's going to help identify the individual trying to communicate. So a good example is going to be if an emergency alert is activated, if we have the identifier, it's going to accelerate the process of us being able to track down that individual and make sure, or somebody from their agency, to make sure that everything is okay. The second thing that's going to be a major change is there's now going to be a 30-second timeout. The primary reason for the timeout is to address those open mic incidents and make sure that the airwaves are not going to be tied up for extended periods of time. There were some concerns in some previous presentations about the fact that 30 seconds isn't necessarily a very long time. Please take a moment to gather your thoughts before transmitting your message, making sure that it's clear and concise, which is going to lead to less chance of misinterpretation, and also ensuring that you're not necessarily going to start rambling on a message. Remembering that there's another human being on the other side is that if it's clear, concise, to the point, the message is going to be taken in a little bit easier and better to understand. In addition, as far as programming goes, you also have your emergency alerts. Part of the programming requirements is to have the emergency alert sound on the channel that the radio is going to be selected on. A few reasons for this. Fire units are typically going to be on a scene or attack channel once they arrive on scene. So they're not always going to be scanning multiple channels. And if you are, there's an increased possibility of missing a sample transmission while you're scanning. Also, broadcasting the alert on a scene or attack channel goes direct to the other radios on scene, which means there's going to be better reception, more people listening, and so then that leads to a decreased chance of missing it. Broadcasting over the response or command is going to rely heavily on the signal to hit an LCD repeater to be rebroadcast out. There's some concerns with that as far as maybe you're in a basement, maybe you're in a low radio coverage area. We don't want to miss these alerts because we do know that they're important. As far as the ambulance personnel go, they should be remaining on the response channel for medical calls to ensure that someone, specifically LCD, is going to get the alert if they activate it. Typically, the only time that they should really be switching to a scene channel is if they're going to be involved in a larger scale incident with the fire department. We know that usually ambulance services, you go out to a call, you may have 2, maybe 3 people on a crew at any given time. You don't have the numbers that the fire department would normally have if they're going to be out on a larger incident. Also, just a reminder, make sure that you're training your people for how your radio alerts are programmed, making sure that everybody knows how the actual the alert works. So does the radio auto transmit for a period of time? Do you have to press the actual push to talk button to transmit after activating the alert? Just making sure that people know exactly what they're going to be doing so that there's no confusion when they have to use it. All right, now we have the standards of use agreement. This is coming directly from the LCD Fire and EMS radio protocols. So effective enforcement and adherence to these protocols ensures fire and EMS services respond effectively to emergencies. Dispatch has the authority to direct responders to different channels based on call volume to ensure effective coordination of services. Failure to follow the guidelines outlined in this document will result in the offending individual service chief being notified and may result in a meeting with the LCD Protocol Committee and disciplinary action up to the revocation of radio privileges. So we understand that there's going to be a learning curve, and our goal by this is not to penalize people, but we just want to make sure that it is out there and clear that we want to establish a standard that everybody is being held to, which is ultimately going to ensure this whole transition is going to be successful. You can find all these updated radio protocols, which I referred to a bunch of them as we went through going over the different radio systems. You can find it on our website. So if you have any questions afterwards. And then just a couple friendly reminders as far as radio etiquette goes. Pleasantries are implied. Try to avoid any please, thank you, good morning, that sort of thing. While we do think that it is very nice that you are sharing those and we appreciate them, however, they do add up quickly if everybody uses them, and especially when our top goal for this whole project is to reduce radio traffic, it kind of defeats the purpose. Secondly, we have brevity. Less is more. Take a second to save a second. Think about what you're going to say before you actually say it. Keep it simple, straight to the point. Remember, you only have those 30 seconds, but of course, we would prefer a little bit less. Always make sure that you're listening for clear airwaves. Make sure that it's clear before you actually start keying up. By upgrading the response and command to a repeaterized system, this is going to be a heck of a lot easier for everybody. Whereas right now, I know that it's difficult if somebody keys up, you don't necessarily know whether or not you're actually stepping over anybody. And then also just know that to use key phrases, such emergency or priority traffic, when you have vital information that needs to be relayed to dispatch in a timely manner, is that our dispatchers are tuned into those specific phrases. So if there's anything that needs to be transmitted right then and there, you're going to take priority if we end up hearing those words. Clarity, making sure that you're keying up, you wait a second and then speak. That's going to prevent your message from being clipped. Also knowing that when you do key up and that MDC identifier is being transmitted, you want to make sure that you're not getting clipped on the front end. Also speak clearly, project your voice, speak with confidence. It's going to make it a heck of a lot easier for everybody on both sides of the radio to understand what's going on. Then we also have acknowledgement. Let the other person know you received their message. Without that acknowledgement, you do not have any confirmation that they actually received your message. And then with that goes with patience, is that we in dispatch don't always know what you're dealing with on the scene, and vice versa. The dispatcher may be answering another radio or a phone in the room at any given time. So when looking for that acknowledgement, have patience within reason before you start trying again. And we'll try and make sure that we do the same on our side. In addition to that, just make sure you're avoiding any unnecessary non-emergency radio traffic, such as like you're on the air getting fuel, driver training, live burns, parades. It's not really anything that we need to know here at dispatch, unless it causes some sort of a response change. So if you're going out for a live burn, maybe you're requesting auto dispatch or mutual aid during that time, then in that case, it makes sense, or even just give us a call so that we can make sure that it makes into our system. And then the projected cutover is going to be next week on Monday. It's going to be a week-long project for the system to get cut over for the VHF system. It is going to be done in stages. During the whole time, the 800 system, Zello, and FireTech systems will be remaining operational. So it's just the VHF. A finalized schedule for the cutover will be going out to service chiefs probably towards the end of this week. And then I guess we can open the floor for questions.
Good job, Jess. How do you want to do the questions, Jess? You want people to unmute or put in the chat, or
Either or.
does anybody have any questions? All right.
Brian, I have a question.
Sure.
I know that some departments have had specific TAC channels programmed into their main zones with intent to use those channels at incidents if needed. So when we're requesting a TAC channel, can we specifically request to use that? Like, say we had TAC 9 in our main zone, for example, can we specifically request TAC 9?
Yeah, I mean, as long as nobody's on it, you can. I mean, Dan, do you see an issue with that?
So, Tyler, we're working on the exact way we're going to handle the TAC channels, and that will come out afterwards. So right now, if you have one, yes, you can request it. But
Okay.
what you just asked does make sense. In other words, if you have a TAC channel that's down that far, you're almost guaranteed you're going to get that.
Yeah, well, because like just Barkhamsted, for example, we put tax 6 in our main zone because originally we were told that we could use that, and then I understand that you guys changed the plan and whatever. That's fine, but like it's in our main zone, so I was asking, can I, or if we had an incident, can we say, hey, can we use tax 6 for this?
So we didn't change the plan, just it was early on. The departments that got 800 didn't get their own individual talk groups, so the committee decided to let those departments use some of the lower tax channels just for now until we got everything organized.
Okay.
But if you've already programmed them and you are making the request and it's a tax channel down that low, I can't imagine you wouldn't get it.
Okay. All right. Great. So it just we just have to specify that we want that tax channel specifically when.
Yep.
Okay. Great.
I mean,
Great.
the guidelines still have to come out, but I'm pretty sure that if you're that far down, tax 1, 2, and 3, I am very confident they're going to be specifically assigned for something. But once you get down the lower ones, they'll be assigned TAC groups.
Yeah. Well, and currently, I think you have more TAC channels than you have departments using the 800 system. So
that's correct. That's why we were able to allow them to use them in the interim.
Yeah.
Till we got to this point.
Yeah. Okay.
Anybody else?
Hey, Brian, Jim Schultz.
Hey, Jim.
How are you? Thank you for this tonight. Thank you, Jess. I think it's important people understand that with this timeout timer, it's a great idea. But if you have, I can't imagine having more information than 30 seconds. But if it does time out, you just release the push to talk button, push it again, you get another 30 seconds. So it's not like your radio shuts off after 30 seconds.
That's a good point.
Well, and not for nothing, but if you sit there and actually count out 30 seconds, like that's a pretty long time for a radio transmission.
It is, but they were, they had said that some people were nervous that they wouldn't have enough time to get their message across.
Yeah.
And if should it time out, just release and rekey, and you get another 30. That should allay their fears.
All right. Well, if there's no more questions, thanks for attending, and hopefully next week goes smoothly.
We're all hoping that. Good luck.
Exactly. Have a good night, everybody. Thanks.
Good night, Brian. Thank you.